Hey, what's up guys, it's Noah. Welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I will be discussing the newest rule set announced for Pokemon VGC, which is the competitive format for double battles, which is what I've been playing on the channel most frequently. The rule set has been announced for February 1st to April 30th, which is actually a good chunk of time. That's 3 months, which is larger, well, it was larger than most series, I believe, that we've had so far. But yeah, 3 months, and it's actually the first time this particular rule set has been in effect, which is you're only allowed to use one of the following on your team, and these are the restricted Pokemon. So think of your boxer legendaries as they have them listed here: Mewtwo, Lugia, Ho-Oh, Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Reshiram, Zekrom, Kyurem, Xerneas, Yveltal, Zygarde, Cosmog, Cosmoem, Solgaleo, Lunala, Necrozma, Zacian, Zamazenta, Eternatus, and Calyrex. So you're allowed to use one of those Pokemon in your team. Most of the time, or what Pokemon has done in the past for VGC, not series, but VGC formats, where they've had restricted, is you're allowed to have two of them on your team. For instance, in 2019, you were allowed to have two. I think Xerneas Groudon was a good core, Xerneas Dialga was a good core. There are other ones as well. In 2016, Wolf Glick actually won the World Championship in a format like this. He brought Rayogre, or Rayquaza, and Kyogre together. And he actually faced off against a Groudon Kyogre team. So you were normally allowed to bring two of these in most of these formats. But this is a new kind of uncharted waters for this format. Is we're only allowed to have one of them. So in this video, I do want to talk about some possible good combinations in the new format, because I think there are some really good possible combinations with just having one restricted. I do think it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how people use the restricteds, because you want to use them in an offensive way. But say you're restricted as Calyrex, what is it, Calyrex Ghost, Calyrex Shadow Rider, whatever the ghost one is, the one that merges with Spectrier. Say you have a Calyrex Ghost. It's Ghost and Psychic type, which means it's 4 times weak to Dark. If the opponent has Yveltal as their restricted, then you're likely not going to win, just because Yveltal is just going to sweep through your whole team. So I think it's going to be a very interesting format for sure on how people balance their restricted Pokemon. But yeah, this is actually the singles rule set, but the doubles rule set's down here, and it's the same, one of the following per team, and you're allowed to have one of the following restricteds. So Pokemon that I expect to be good really early on, I mentioned a couple, I believe. I'm actually just going to use the Gen 8 OU. I guess I'll use a VGC 2021 format here. But yeah, so Pokemon that I expect to be really good early on, I expect, not Spectrier, but the Calyrex version of Spectrier, Calyrex Shadow. I expect this to be really strong. It has base 150 speed, which outspeeds most things, and 165 special attack, and its signature move, Astral Barrage, is 120, and it hits both foes. So this move, coupled with the stupid special attack and speed on this thing, and it's not like it's a weak Pokemon either. 180 with 100 base HP is not like frail. Like it's going to be able to take a couple hits at neutral, especially if it's Dynamax. Like this thing is going to be an absolute nightmare, and I believe it does get Expanding Force. And this is where I want to point out, if you pair this thing with, say, an Indeedee female, you can just follow me and just hit stuff if they don't have like a spread dark type move. Like Snarl or Moltres' Fiery Wrath. Like, this combination can just sweep through teams if you're not ready for it, I think, because you have a 120 base power move that hits both foes on Psychic terrain, because, you know, with Indeedee, and obviously Indeedee gets Expanding Force as well, or you have Astral Barrage, which is a Ghost type move. So if you're, you know, if you're not coming up against a Dark type, you're in really good shape here with these two. So as counterplay, I think Yveltal is going to get some play. I'm not a huge fan of Yveltal, but I think with 131, and 126 base HP, like, it's a good Pokemon, right? Like, it's got good bulk. 126 is definitely nothing to scoff at. 95, 98 is good, and 99 speed is just below base 100, so you probably want it to be a couple of speed points faster, but it's not a huge deal. But it gets good attacking moves, right? Like, it gets Sucker Punch, which is really good. It gets Oblivion Wing, which is really good. It heals 75% of the damage dealt as a special flying type move, is ridiculous. Sorry, I just bumped the mic there. It gets Dark Pulse, which is obviously a really good move. I think, does it get anything else noticeable here? I mean, it gets Rock Slide. Like, it gets some good coverage moves. It gets U-turn as well and Taunt. So, like, it's a good Pokemon, right? Yveltal's good, and it'll be very good because these two, I think, are going to be very, very prevalent. I think Rillaboom's going to stay relevant because of Indeedee. I think you're going to have to need some sort of terrain control. So I think Rillaboom and Tapu Fini are going to be huge because you're going to need to counter this in some way. You're going to need to counter the Psychic Terrain in some sort of way. I also think for the people that are not running Yveltal, I almost think that Moltres Galar is going to have to be a must. Simply because of its Fiery Wrath. Like, this thing, the fact that this thing ignores Follow Me, like, this is gonna one-shot most Calyrex, I'm pretty sure. So, especially if you throw a Life Orb on it. Moltres, I think, is gonna show up on a lot of teams, even more so now, in the next series than it is currently, because it counters these two so well, and if you don't have a counter for these two, it will just run through you. I guess another counter for this would be, like, Steel types are okay against it, so I'm thinking what I might run early in the format is a Dialga, because it just kind of covers for a lot of different stuff. Like, base 100 HP and then base 120, 100 is not bad at all. And 150 special attack, you get a lot of usage out of it. And I believe Dialga gets Trick Room as well. Yeah, so you can Trick Room. Dialga's gonna be a really good Pokemon against it. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a super interesting a super interesting concept about how to deal with these two, because they're just going to be very, very strong together. I think Dialga is going to be good, mainly because it deals with most of, like, the top ones, like the ones that stick out right away. It deals fairly well with Calyrex Shadow. I mean, it still takes the Astra Barrage, not incredibly, but you're going to be running max HP on this thing, so you should be okay, especially in Dynamax. You'll be okay. Zacian is really, really good. Like, people have been running, that's not the one I want the crowned version. Nice, okay. So people run Zacian crowned, right? Especially in, like, the two restricted format, which we've been playing. Zacian crowned is really, 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 really strong. However, in a one restricted format, Zacian Crown becomes less enticing because you can't Dynamax it. It's still an incredibly strong Pokemon with an incredibly stupid ability. 148 base speed is, I think, one of the reasons Calyrex is going to be really good, because it just outspeeds Zacian at 148, because Calyrex hits 150 down here. But Zacian has 170 base attack, and it gets an attack boost whenever it switches in. So this thing is going to be nasty. Like, if you're just running Jolly max, for instance, let's look at this. That's Lax. That's not what I want. Jolly. There we go. Okay. You're hitting 220 speed, which is really, really fast. Like, that's faster than Dragapult. It's faster than pretty much everything but Pheromosa and Regieleki. You're hitting 222 attack, and you're getting a boost when you switch in. So this is going to hit 333. You're going to be 333 attack and 220 speed when you switch onto the field. So I think Zacian is going to be really, really strong, but it can't max, and I think that kind of balances it out a little bit, especially in a one restricted format. So counters to Zacian, I think Incineroar is going to be really almost necessary against Zacian, because one, it walls its stabs. Play Rough is going to be Play Rough, and I think everything's going to run Play Rough, Behemoth Blade, and then either Wild Charge or Close Combat. So it walls its stabs, which is really good, and it walls Behemoth Blade, which is, like, you have to be able to wall Behemoth Blade because it's 100 base power with 100 accuracy, no drawback. So Incineroar is going to be really, really important, and it lowers attack on switch in. So, like, this thing is going to be, it's going to be necessary. You're either going to need Incineroar or you're going to need, like, a Scarf Burn Pokemon. One of the two, I think, is going to be extremely necessary in this format to stop Zacian. I mean, there's the problem with Zacian is, like, it can't max, right? But there's not a ton of counters to it. I mean, I could see maybe Scarf Entei popping up. Does Scarf Entei even outspeed Zacian? Let's see. It surely does, right? It's 220 and Entei hits barely. Whew, that's ridiculous. You don't have to run you can run Adamant Scarf, but still, that's ridiculous. That does so much damage. Or that's ridiculous. The speed stat that Zacian hits at 220. You're barely gonna outspeed this. You're gonna hit like 227, 228 with Entei Scarf, but geez Louise. Anyway, Entei Scarf could see some play. maybe Excadrill comes back with Sand because it hits. I don't know. Like Zacian's a really really strong Pokemon, but outside like I just don't know how you can run it and not max it. Like you're gonna need to run this thing with probably a. I mean, obviously it'll have the rest of the sword, so they can get into this crown version. But goodness gracious, like, do you need to max this thing for it to be good? Like, look at these stats. It's ridiculous, and it still has 115, 115, which is stupidly bulky for a Pokemon that does that much damage. Other Pokemon I expect to be good. I think Kyogre is going to be really good. And I think Groudon's also going to see some play just because Kyogre is going to be really good, I think. 150 special attack is ridiculous in the rain. If you can, it just specs it. Or Life Orb and just smack stuff. Max Geyser with Rain Up with 150 special attack and a Life Orb is going to be ridiculous. Like, Kyogre is just going to go to work on stuff. I could see Scarf Kyogre as well. Let's take a look at the Scarf. What does Kyogre hit with Scarf? It hits 210. Doesn't it? See, this is the problem, right? Is that with Scarf Kyogre you can't run Modest. You can't run Modest because it's like it needs the speed to outspeed Calyrex and Zacian. So you'd have to run Scarf like this and then maybe take some speed out. I'd put it at 150 and then put some HP in. Something like this would be pretty good, I think, for Kyogre. And you do hit stuff extremely hard with Water Spout. Don't get me wrong. Like, Water Spout in Rain, 150 base power, or 150 special attack and 150 base power. Spread move is just really, really strong. Groudon's along the same lines. It's not exactly the same because it's more of a physical attacker than a special attacker, but 100 special attack isn't anything to scoff at, you know? Like, if you want to run... You're probably not going to run Eruption. Does it even get Eruption still? It does get Eruption. Okay. I don't think you're going to want to run Eruption. Most of the time, you're going to run something like this. Protect, Precipice Blades, or as I like to say, Pachiblades. Eruption, or not Eruption, Fire Punch is what I meant to put in there. Fire Punch, not Fire Blast. Fire Punch. There we go. And maybe one more. You don't really need Earthquake. Hammer Arm maybe as a max move. Rock Slide could be good. If you're running a special Groudon, Solar Beam could be okay, but you don't really want to run special Groudon most of the time, I don't think. Thunder Punch could be really interesting. But yeah, Groudon's another one that I'm anticipating is going to get a bunch of play. I'm trying to think. I think another core that could be really, really strong, and I think another reason you'll want to run Rillaboom or Tapu Fini is because of this core, and that is Tapu Koko with something like an Assault Vest and then Zekrom. I think this is going to be really, really strong because Terravolt, like, it's kind of like Mold Breaker. It ignores its moves and effects, ignore the abilities. So with 150 base attack and 120 special attack is good, like, as well. Like, that's pretty solid. These two stats boosted by Electric Terrain, Zekrom's going to be ridiculously strong. Like, Bolt Strike is just going to do so much damage, and Max Lightning is going to be ridiculous with the Life Orb. Like, you give Zekrom a Life Orb and Bolt Strike, and it should just run through stuff. So Zekrom's going to be really, really strong. And I think that Zekrom has a ton of potential in the format with Koko, especially just by, like, with one restricted. Like, you give these two and then you give like 4 Pokemon that counter a Groudon, and I think that's gonna be ridiculously strong, because obviously you don't want Groudon or Koko in a Groudon matchup, or you don't want Zekrom or Koko in a Groudon matchup. But you know, you throw in like a Fini, or not a Fini, but I'm trying to think of something that could counter a ground type like Groudon. You throw in something like a grass, just any Pokemon that, honestly, any Pokemon that gets Grass Knot's going to be pretty good in the metagame as well. Although Grass Knot does, it gets canceled by Max, so you have to be careful there. But Grass Knot's going to be huge for Groudon. Kartana, like, you could throw Kartana on this team and it'd be fine against like Groudon. You could just outspeed and hit it with Leaf Blade, and Kartana's just doing ridiculous amounts of damage. Yeah, that could actually be a really good core. Actually, these three, I don't really see anything that like hits this really hard. I think that could be a really strong core as well. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm just kind of spitballing as I go here. Maybe Torkoal with Drought and then like a Reshiram maybe could be pretty interesting, because obviously you can't run Groudon and Reshiram at the same time. But 150 special attack is good, and you get Blue Flare. Is that the same thing? Yeah, 20% chance to burn on 130 base power. Like, again, it's the same thing, right? You're boosting with Sun, and then you're going from there. Torkoal could be really strong with Reshiram. What else could be pretty strong? I think partners for Groudon, I forgot to kind of mention. We think Torkoal Venusaur is ridiculously strong now. I think this Pokemon plus Venusaur is going to be ridiculously strong. Because you can just sleep stuff. You throw these two in with like a... like if you pair, say, Groudon... you give it like a Life Orb and Drought. And then you pair it with like a Venusaur with Focus Sash. And you just... Because, like, realistically, you're not really going to max this thing, but you can give it Sleep Powder, and it's going to be so annoying. And then you use something like Indeedee Female to make sure that you can sleep stuff on switch in, or Rillaboom even. Like, Rillaboom would be fine here. Rillaboom G-Max, or just regular Rillaboom with Assault Vest. Like, this looks like a really strong core as well, because now you can sleep stuff, and then you just throw, like... I mean, you can throw a Water-type Pokemon on here, like Urshifu Water Form would be really, really good with a core like this. But yeah, like, there's a bunch of possibilities with a bunch of these Pokemon. Lastly, I want to talk about the Ice Horse, because that's kind of like the problem that's been going around the Pokemon metagame currently. So let's look. Calyrex Ice Form. So it gets an attack boost, right, on Glastrier, which is just ridiculous. Like, look at these stats. Base 100 HP is... In a restricted format, it's okay, but when you take into account that you can max this thing and it has 150, 130 with 165 base attack, like it's going to run through teams. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if like Duraludon picked up in usage just so that it could ignore redirection. Like, this thing is ridiculously busted. Like, you give this thing a Life Orb, and then any sort of redirection user, Amoonguss, Clefairy, you set Trick Room, and then you just go. Like, you give this thing, like, it would run something like this. Life Orb, then its move, what's it called? What's the move called? Glacial Lance, that's the one. Glacial Lance, yeah. It's the same thing as Astral Barrage, it's just 10 base power stronger, and it's physical. So, you give this thing Glacial Lance, you give it, does it get any Psychic physical moves? See, this could be a problem. Oh, it gets Zen Headbutt. So you give it Glacial Lance, you give it Zen Headbutt, and then you give it like something that, I don't know, does it get Close Combat? It gets Close Combat. So just run this and then run Trick Room, and like, what's stopping that? Like that's a nasty looking that's a disgusting looking Pokemon in Trick Room. Like, this looks utterly broken in my opinion. And then you pair it with like Clefairy and Tapu Fini, so you can't get slept by Amoonguss. This thing looks stupid. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see me play with some of these teams in the future, then leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.